Welcome everyone, Christine here with a discussion about difficulty settings in Total War Warhammer 3 Immortal Empires and the impact they can have on campaigns. The reason I'm doing this particular video is because I want to highlight the differences the higher difficulty settings can make in a campaign, or difficulty settings in general. Because I make a lot of guides, I make a lot of ranking videos, and inevitably when you do that, a lot of people will criticize you. But specifically in Warhammer 3, or in Total War in general, people who play on lower difficulties may not necessarily understand exactly what's happening on higher difficulties. And I want to emphasize the following point. Every video I do, every ranking, every guide, every discussion, I do it based on what's going to happen on Legendary, very hard difficulty. The other difficulties do not matter at all for me, from my perspective. I don't make guides for easy, I make guides for the hardest difficulties in the game, so that people can overcome those difficulties, overcome those challenges, and know what to expect. That's what I make all the videos I do on this channel based on. I've been playing Total War since Rome 1, so that's almost 20 years that I've been playing this series. And I've seen a lot of things in these games over the years. Now, let's talk about difficulties. You obviously have campaign difficulty and battle difficulty. Let's talk about campaign difficulty very quickly. What does it do to you? What does it do to the AI? Well, to you, you'll start with less money. You'll see less of the campaign map with campaign line of sight. This is a mod. It's called Toggle Fog of War. I use it to talk about things on the campaign map. Makes it easier to show people what I'm talking about in terms of like campaign paths, all that. It's not something I use in the campaigns I play, really. It's more so something I use as a tool for the videos I do. This campaign, by the way, outside of that, is basically unmodded. And this hasn't really played a role in the campaign I've been playing. But Legendary difficulty, or campaign difficulty in general. What is going to be the impact of that? Beyond the obvious, you can't save on Legendary. You are reliant on autosave. That can be a bit annoying, by the way, when it comes down to it. You can't save when you want, you can't quick save, and you get a bunch of modifiers yourself. You'll start with less money, and you will suffer tremendously when it comes to your control, your public order. Because on Legendary, like on every other difficulty, there is a difficulty level modifier for your control, for your public order. It is annoying. It is especially annoying that on Legendary it's double that on very hard. On very hard it's -4, on Legendary it's -8. Now some races don't care about this. Marafi and Marafi absolutely doesn't care about it because she does have Slaaneshi corruption and she has a bunch of ways of maintaining control of her provinces, despite the slave economy she is dealing with as well, also affecting her control. But some races do care about this. And this is a thing that actually needs to be mentioned in relation to dwarves, because the problem is low level of control affects your growth. The dwarves have poor growth, so if you're playing on a very high difficulty, you're kind of screwed playing as dwarves. You're much slower. But they're an exception to this, really. Most races are not going to struggle with this anymore. They used to in Warhammer 2. It used to be a constant annoyance. But nowadays, it's not really an issue, with the exception of the dwarves and a handful of other people, or some very specific campaigns as well. To an extent, the Dark Elves can struggle with it because of the slave mechanic, because you can get to up to -12 control in every province, but you can keep it in check with a number of things like diktats, fight to the death in particular, or open markets as well. There are ways of maintaining control when it comes down to it. Really, the dwarves get affected by it the most, and not from a rebellion standpoint, but from a growth standpoint. And that's just something that affects you, the player. What about the AI? Well, the AI will generate significantly more money from their settlements. They'll have more background income. They'll have far better casualty replenishment. They'll take far less damage from any level of attrition around the campaign map, and those kind of things. Crucially, if you're playing on Legendary, then the AI gets a lot more recruitment slots, both in local recruitment, and I think it's +3 on Legendary, as well as global recruitment pools. This is how, if you're ever fighting against the Skaven on Legendary, that's how they produce those stacks. They have upkeep benefits, income benefits, recruitment slot benefits. That's how you see the Skaven produce entire stack of units in just a handful of turns. Though generally they do produce clan rats and Skaven slaves early on, but later on they do certainly produce more substantial units. So that's the campaign side of things. What does this mean for the way campaigns are played, especially between different factions? Well, some factions don't benefit from the recruitment slot situation. Beastmen, for instance, don't benefit from it at all. This is one of the reasons why Beastmen struggle on the highest difficulties. And even the Tomb Kings don't really benefit from it because they have limited armies. Beastmen, Tomb Kings have limited number of armies that they can recruit on their campaign. So while certainly the global recruitment and local recruitment benefit is useful if they want to recruit troops very quickly, it will cap out very, very quickly. If you ever wonder why a Beastman campaign, any Beastman legend, why no Beastman Legendary Lord on Legendary difficulty achieves anything with the exception of maybe Mogre over here, it's because they can't increase their army capacity unless they put down a lot of Hearthstones. They can't put a lot of Hearthstones, so they're basically running around with a full stack. They can get that full stack very, very quickly, sure, but that's all they're going to have. And you can always defeat another full stack in your campaign. Whereas the Skaven are running around with half a dozen stacks in their campaigns. That's one of the things that does limit the AI. Hell, if you're playing the Beastmen, for instance, you're also obviously going to be limited by the limited recruitment slots, but for the AI, they're not getting that benefit. Some factions do, some factions don't. Some factions care about the fact that the AI almost never faces rebellions and gets a significant casualty or replenishment benefit, and a growth benefit as well. For instance, the dwarves, which you can struggle with significantly as the player, are actually very powerful on Legendary because of all the benefits. All the issues the dwarves have, the higher difficulties resolve. The growth issues, casualty replenishment, the control issue, the economic issues, the recruitment slot issues. The only issue that it does solve is their army roster issue, but basically, out of the major issues that the dwarves have in their campaigns, if you're playing them, the highest difficulty solves these issues for the AI. That's why AI-controlled dwarves are so much more so difficult to deal with, potentially, in a campaign, dependent on who you are and what your faction can have on offer. But there are certainly races that won't necessarily benefit from it as much as others. For instance, the Wood Elves don't actually benefit from the growth situation at all. Don't ask me what's going on over here with Claw and the Wood Elves, though. But still, they might not benefit from that pretty much at all. The reason is that while the Wood Elves obviously will benefit from the income situation, they won't benefit from the growth situation because they don't use growth for their main settlement buildings. They use them for secondary buildings. So when you're dealing with Wood Elves, they won't reach high levels of tier on their main settlement buildings as quickly as some other factions will. That's simply a reality in their campaigns. And also, the AI is very ineffective with its money. That's one of the reasons why they don't grow their settlements as quickly as possible. Though in this case, I think Orion's been spending a lot of his money upgrading the Oak of Ages as opposed to upgrading his regular settlement. It's actually something that limits his campaign as well. Something that's a very significant limiting factor. Anyone who's dealt with Orion on the campaign map knows he's basically someone you step over, more or less. But when you control Orion, he's the most powerful legendary lord by far in the game right now because of his faction effects. It's bewildering to see the night and day difference between you controlling a faction and the AI controlling a faction because they're not necessarily benefiting from a high difficulty level. I think the difficulty level benefits don't work as well for some factions. Now, why is this important to understand things? Well, this is important to understand because certain races will obviously be much stronger on higher difficulties than lower difficulties. The Dark Elves are going to be ridiculously stronger. The Dwarves are going to be ridiculously stronger in the AI hands. The High Elves are going to be stronger. The Lizardmen will always take over Lustria, with the exception of Rakarth's territory, within a relatively good period of time. Though in this case, Rakarth has actually done exceptionally well, and the Skaven are still alive, but it's only a matter of time until Itza puts down the Skaven rebellion, and Yeah, it might be because I'm playing Morathi and I have an alliance with Hexoatl. That's also a weird thing. It seems like military alliances do affect the AI and its decision making, weirdly enough. I'm not sure if there's like some hidden modifier in the game, and like if you are allied with a faction, that faction is going to be far less effective. It's something plenty of people have noticed. So you making an alliance with the faction just nerfs them in some way. It might come down to aggressiveness. That's actually a very significant factor, by the way. The more resources the AI has, the more comfortable it feels. The more comfortable it feels, the more aggressive it's going to be. And on top of that, on a higher difficulty level in campaign and battle, the AI is going to be biased against you as the player. Actually, it's campaign difficulty that makes the AI more biased against you as the player. So you can ignore the diplomacy screen can be useful. It's not something to ignore completely, but at the same time, there are obviously hidden modifiers that make the AI more aggressive towards the player. There is an AI bias against the player. It's a bit ridiculous when you see an AI army marching across several territories just to attack one of your undefended provinces and then get wiped out with ease by the fact that you noticed them, you did the merchants recruitment of some regiments of renown and wiped them out. But it is annoying. There are some mods that do improve the AI behavior, but crucially, difficulty settings on the campaign do affect AI behavior, especially against you as the player, but not just that. Then there's battle difficulty. Let's talk about this situation. Now, what does battle difficulty do? Well, morale bonuses, battle benefits, the obvious stuff. But how does it relate to a campaign? That's where it comes into play. Well, battle difficulty also does something as well. Battle difficulty affects the auto-resolve result. So let's say I have a siege here, right? In Toracare and Crix. This is on the highest difficulty. If I fight this siege, these are the kind of results I'll get. Though this isn't necessarily a great example. But basically, in this situation, if I were to auto-resolve that siege, I'll just move this army a bit away, so maybe I can get... Alright, so if I'm on very hard battle difficulty, the auto-resolve will make me lose this battle. If I go over here and set the battle difficulty to easy, and come back into this battle, it will be a decisive victory. Now keep in mind, I moved this army away, it would have been a decisive victory on very hard. If I actually fight this battle manually, I'll walk all over this army with relative ease because none of these units can stand up to what I have. Just to be very, very clear on this. That said, battle difficulty doesn't just affect the auto-resolve result. It's also seemingly affecting some other things as well. At least from my experience, because I do a lot of campaign testing of mechanics, and that means I try a lot of different campaigns. To save my time, the heartache and effort, I play a lot of campaigns potentially when I'm testing stuff on easy. And I've noticed significant differences when it comes to that. One of the differences you may notice is experience from battle. In general, if you're auto-resolving battles, you'll gain less experience, but if you're setting the battle difficulty lower, you're going to get less experience for your units. So that can, in itself, can be a very significant difference as well in your campaigns, because having a far less experienced army means that when you do encounter a major foe, it can be a bit of an issue over here. So imagine if this army was as experienced as Morathi's army over here, I could take down two of these stacks on my own. Maybe all three of them, depending on the experience that these guys have. But as it is, this army is just playing a bit of game of chicken right here with Hellebron. And so is this one, by the way. But that's not all this modifies, by the way. Because the battle difficulty also affects the campaign AI behavior. On a high difficulty, the AI on very hard in particular, the AI is almost suicidally aggressive against certain factions. Now, sometimes it works in their favor if their faction has a great deal of power. if their race has a great deal of power. One of the reasons Grimgor almost always achieves some level of success, though in this particular campaign it seems he has stumbled a bit, but he's still alive. Like, actually, this is probably one of the worst results I've seen in Grimgor for a very, very long time, but all the same, he still has entire provinces, and he does have almost a full stack of troops, even though he has lost some troops, 2 full stacks even over here. But it seems he's struggling a bit with Kolic in this particular campaign situation. Well, more than a bit. Kolic has actually taken quite a bit of his territory. That said, when you're playing on a high difficulty with a very hard battle difficulty, the AI feels more confident in its chances, and it will be far more aggressive. Now, there's a bit of a problem in this for the AI, because this can bite it in the ass. The AI feels more aggressive, but it's not actually related to its chances in battle. I've often seen the AI attack settlements and never had a chance of winning on this kind of difficulty. In fact, on a lower difficulty, there are quite a few situations where the AI being more careful, not being as aggressive, actually played in its favor. But it depends on which faction you're talking about. Generally speaking, the Greenskins can steamroll a lot of the factions on high difficulty, but they can be a bit too reckless and get wiped out. In fact, out at the Greenskin factions, most of the time they do get wiped out. In fact, this is a bit of an odd result, because we see Skarsnik over here about to wipe out Forgrim, although actually not quite the case, because Forgrim does have a full stack of troops. He's going to turn around and smash Skarsnik in the face. This has been a bit of a weird campaign. This generally never happens, actually, here. Generally, Skarsnik gets wiped out, Warzag gets wiped out, because Queek shows up over here. The fact that Warzag is still alive at this point, that is a bit of a surprising situation. But that's one of the things. These campaigns are dynamic. But generally speaking, the AI can be suicidally aggressive on higher difficulties, or a bit too careful on lower difficulties in their campaign. A great example I can give of this is actually Archon the Black here. Depending on the difficulty you're playing in a campaign, Archon can either wipe out Rapans with ease and then fight a freeway war with Volkmar, Cetra, and Skarbrand and hold them back. I've seen him do that. That was the most exceptional thing I've seen in any campaign, like Archon just being attacked constantly by the unholy alliance of Volkmar, Cetra, and Skarbrand and holding his own in his starting provinces because he's that powerful. But also similarly, on just switching the battle difficulty to easy throughout the entire campaign, I've seen him wiped out by Rapans. Now, needless to say, Archon is far more powerful than Rapans is. He's got more combat power, he starts with 2 armies, he can get a lot of units. Like, the only reason, like, right now, he's about to wipe her out in, like, a couple of turns, I believe. Unless Volkmar decides to march some full stacks over here against them. That might be the only thing that saves her. But outside of that, she really doesn't stand a chance. Now, beyond what's going to happen with AI, how does this affect you? Well, the AI being more aggressive means that they'll be more aggressive against you, especially because you're considered an easy target. You're considered, in fact, one of the easiest targets for them to attack because you don't get any benefit in auto-resolve like they do. They get the benefit in auto-resolve. So they're going to be insanely aggressive against you, even in places where you shouldn't be, where they shouldn't be. And you should be aware of this. The AI, if it sees like an undefended settlement with which it can attack on a very high difficulty, and they don't like you, chances are they'll attack you. Even if you have neutral relationships, a neutral relationship with them, they might break a non-aggression pact just to screw you over here. But high difficulty might actually act in your favor in quite a few campaigns. Take this campaign over here. I won it, basically I turned 37, or turned 30 or so. I marched 2 full stacks, not under Marathi, just secondary army, third army, 1 Black Ark, 1 army on land. I marched them in Lothern. It was not defended. At the time, I took out the garrison. Tyrion counterattacked immediately after. He got beaten back. Alariel sent 2 full stacks. I won. She did have the Sword of Cain. But here's the reason I was able to succeed in that. It wasn't because I was playing some masterclass strategic... it's not because I'm some masterclass strategic genius. In fact, I was very iffy on doing this. But the reason I did this is because on Legendary Very Hard, because the AI is so aggressive, who does it benefit here in Wolf 1? It's not the High Elves that benefit the most from that. It's actually Noctilus and Akari. Because between the extra recruitment slots, which by the way also affects the Raised Dead mechanics for the Vampire Coast, between that, the AI aggressiveness, the benefits are not resolved, the benefits that by the way Legendary Lords get against minor factions, then that means Noctilus over here can take the entire western coastland of Wolf 1 on a high difficulty. On a low difficulty, he won't attack as aggressively. He'll, especially against provincial capitals, I've seen entire AR armies on lower difficulties just hesitate for dozens of turns before attacking. It kind of gets silly after a while when you see them just doing nothing when they absolutely have the army to do so. So in this case, since this was a campaign on Legendary very hard battle difficulty, Noctilus took the coastline. He put a lot of pressure on Tyrion and Alariel. Nakari did the same thing with Crix, took Katik, took Torivres. That meant that Alariel and Tyrion were running around trying to put down the fires. Elfarion had basically been eliminated in Nakari, and I swept in with 2 armies, built a third, and conquered all of Wolf 1 without Morathi ever stepping foot in Wolf 1. This is a bit of a special case, and a lot of things went my way in this campaign for that to happen. A confederation over here at the right moment, for instance. Tyrion not being in Lothern or close enough to Lothern to interfere when I arrived there. Him not declaring war on me. Though certainly I did abuse a lot of mechanics in order to, or rather I used a lot of mechanics. One of the things I did is I didn't engage with diplomatically with Noctilus or Nakari. That meant I wasn't pissing off both Alariel and Tyrion at the same time, because they hate if you do that. So they didn't declare war on me. And by the time I arrived, it was too late, and I was the one that initiated the war with the first strike on Lothern. That's, by the way, something that Noctilus can use. But in this case, the success I have in this campaign is because I'm playing on high difficulty, which benefited me because the High Elven Doom stacks, Doom Lords over here, the unholy trio or the golden trio of Tyrion, Alariel, and Elfarion, who are really powerful, each of them in their own way, who are very close to each other and are allied to each other, were constantly kept under pressure by 2 Legendary Lords and a minor faction here, and I was just able to take advantage of that. I likely wouldn't have been able to do that on a lower difficulty. Finally, all those development benefits the AI gets in its settlements, well, you take advantage of that, because higher level settlements means more income from sacking those settlements or just taking them over. More armies means more experience, more money for your own troops, for your own lords. Means you can develop more. This is how you reach ridiculous levels of power in a campaign. Very quickly. Some people talk about campaigns that last 100 turns. I generally win my campaigns by turn 30. With almost every Legendary Lord. And when I say win, I reach a point where I can't lose. Unless it's an endgame crisis literally spawns next to me, I can't lose. This was the case for this particular campaign. That point came here at Hack Hole, when I faced off against 2 stacks under the Sisters of Twilight. What happened at turn 37 when I took Lothern just cemented that one. But I had already basically won the campaign. Everything else was just mop-up. Everything else I'm doing right here, complete mop-up. But the money I got in the campaign, how did I afford 3 full stacks? 1 stack under Morathi constantly going north, 2 stacks going for Lothern. Well, I sold territory to the AI. The AI having more money means they can pay me more money for the settlements. I was taking this entire province and selling it to Mazdamundi, making money. I sold this province as well to Mazdamundi. I moved over here to the north, took this province, developed it, sold it to Malekith. Got a lot of money from that. Looted and occupied Lothern. Got ridiculous money. Sacked the Witchwood. Got a significant amount of money there as well. That's how these things work. That's how you reach a point by turn 50 in your campaign where if the endgame crisis happened now, I would defeat it. Simple as that. Like, if, let's say for instance, Grombrindal's endgame crisis spawned here, I would just throw all the armies I have and defeat it. Assuming Malekith and Katep wouldn't defeat it for me at this point in their campaigns. But looking at the situation, I have 6 armies on Ulthuan. The reason they're so close to each other is because I've been conquering Ulthuan with them and building them to deal with various issues. 6 full stacks, pretty powerful stacks. Yes, one is a Black Ark, sure, so lower upkeep. Then I have another army here, another Black Ark over here, 2 other stacks. I'm looking at what, 9 armies, a 10 army full stack of troops, and I can afford these guys. Maybe not all of them at full strength without the Black Ark, but I'm getting to that point very, very quickly. I'm diplomacy, I'm strength rank 1 by far. No other faction comes even close to the power I have, and the 2 most powerful factions besides me are my allies. This campaign is weird, but this gives you an idea of what you can achieve, but only what you can achieve on high difficulties, because without the AI aggressiveness, I would not have had the opportunities. Without the AI money, I would not have gotten as rich as I did, as fast as I did. That's what's important to understand here when you're watching, when you're trying to understand the difference in your campaign. It's not like, oh, the AI has more resources. No, it's not just the AI has more resources. You do as well, significantly more. This is one of the main reasons these kind of resources, the kind of benefits you get on high difficulty, actually lead to certain races being the most powerful as they are. This is the reason why the dwarves are so horrible, for instance, or the empire is so horrible, because they don't benefit as much as some other races. But how is that? How do they not benefit as much from playing on a high difficulty? Well, pretty simple. If you're playing Dark Elves, Greenskins, Wood Elves, Chaos, other factions, Greenskin, like just, Grom the Paunch, Grimgor, any of those kind of factions, as opposed to Dwarves, the Empire, some Order factions. The reason you benefit so much more on a high difficulty level than a lower difficulty level comes down to this. You get benefits from sacking settlements. You get benefits from post-battle loot. You're basically playing raider factions. You're playing factions that rely on the monies others have to grow your own economy. That's the reason you benefit from it. But every faction can benefit to a certain degree or another. High Elves benefit from just the trade agreements they can sign with other factions. And also from trading away settlements. Like, that's something everyone can, and getting a lot of money in return. That's something everyone can benefit in their campaigns. But the reason, like, Warriors of Chaos, Greenskins, and Wood Elves are some of the strongest races in the game, the strongest races in the game, is not just because they have good unit rosters or good legendary lords or anything like that. It's because on the highest possible difficulties in the game, they can get ridiculously rich very, very quickly by just beating the AI, by being extremely aggressive to the point of suicide, to the point that you could consider it suicidal. Same in this campaign. Launching an invasion of the High Elven Hearthland with a secondary army is against someone that was using the Sword of Cain and Tyrion is almost suicidal in its own right. But at the same time, when you're in a position because of a high difficulty, because of all the money you're getting from sacking settlements, to outspend the AI, to outnumber the AI, then you understand what makes a race strong. That's the difference between the strong races and weak races on a high difficulty level. That's why the Tomb Kings can have a lot of issues in their campaigns. That's why the Dwarves can have a lot of issues in their campaigns. That's why the weaker races are weak and the stronger races are strong. It boils down to this. It is a major impact in all of their campaigns. Costin here signing out. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and enable notifications, and stay tuned for more.